Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I am here today continuing our efforts that we started in 2008 to bring to you all of the political leaders, all of the candidates across this nation that are seeking to guide our nation to the future. We believe it's important that you get to hear from them directly what they stand for, what they believe in, what they plan to do. Not a 30-second summary by some politico. I want you to hear their actual voices. And with that being said, as you can see on the screen, I have with me today Mr. Dustin Hill. Mr. Hill is a former, or actually always a Marine like myself. He served 23 years in the United States Marine Corps, and he's been around the world in the service of our nation. He is currently running for the Missouri 3rd District. This is a first-time candidate. And like always with first-time candidates, we're a little nice, but we're still tough and fair. So because I know what it is to be a candidate, I ran myself in 2014 for the first time for Congress. So I know how it can be difficult, especially to get your voice out there. But that's enough about me. Without further ado, let's start talking to Dustin directly. Dustin, I welcome you and thank you for joining us here on the channel. And can you tell those of us in Missouri and across the nation, in fact, across the world, a little bit about yourself?
Sure, sir. Sadly, the first thing I have to do is kind of backtrack just a little bit. I didn't serve 23 years in the inside or in the Marine Corps. I did 8 years in the Corps. My September 11th is my birthday. I went to Mizzou, which is the biggest college in Missouri, right after high school in 1998. I thought I was going to be a naval submarine officer, was a midshipman for a semester, and then enlisted in the Marine Corps. Made it to Marine Reconnaissance, did the invasion of Afghanistan with 1st Recon Battalion. September 11th, 2001 was my 21st birthday. And it was my first foreign port of call, actually. So went straight to the AFPAC theater, came back to the United States after that invasion, went to Force Reconnaissance, still on the West Coast, did the invasion of Iraq in 2003 with 1st Force Recon Company. Came back, got out of the Marine Corps in 2007. And then ever since I've worked for as a federal war zone contractor, guarding diplomats, other various government agencies in hazardous zones around the world. My last assignment was last year after out in Kabul, Afghanistan. I did that, got out about a week before that city fell. Came back, did another tour near northern Iraq, and then came home and, the folks talked to me and they said, you've been doing this a long time. You're not married. You don't have any kids. It's a little hard to have those things when you're always coming home to the farm, dropping your combat gear, grabbing more gear, and going right back out the door. Maybe it's time to do something else. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. I was looking at buying the hometown bar in my hometown of 160 people, Middletown, Missouri. And somebody bought it before me. And so I said, well, screw it. I'll run for Congress then. I wish it was that simple, but I've been thinking about running for office for a long time, being part of the federal Leviathan for so long, 8 years military, another 15 in and out of federal service. I've seen kind of a degradation. I would say the federal government almost seems to have a war on competence going. Especially over the last 10 years. I would say something in the 08-09 realm changed it. And because my educational background is economics, I have a BBA in business economics from Georgia State University in 2015. I was a Boren Scholar over in Egypt in 2011. I actually left Mosul, Iraq, where I was working, went to Cairo, Egypt on that scholarship, and then got there, and 3 weeks later, the revolution started. So I got to study central banking, finance, and economics, as well as Arabic in a Middle Eastern state convulsing from bad governance and bad central banking policy. It was really an eye-opening experience. And it's that kind of experience that I've tried to bring home to Missouri now that I'm running for Congress, and share with the constituents of Missouri and America, because they've been really good to me. I have to, and I say this all the time, is my career, my training, my education, my salary. I've had 2 shoulder surgeries. All that has been on the back of America's taxpayers, whether they knew it or not. So a lot of this campaign for me and my team is about, okay, you've paid for me to become this kind of educated person, this world traveling citizen. Let me give back to you guys now. This is what's actually going on, especially with our federal government. This is how the federal government makes the cheddar, so to say. And this is where we can fix it. And some people have asked me, why didn't I run for state or local first? And I say to them, I don't think we really have time for that. The federal government is trying to burn the system that has built itself up ever so quickly. It's burning it down at almost a geometric rate. And my heart, I tell this all the time because I meet a lot of candidates on the trail. My heart goes out to state and local government officials, even if people want to throw things at them, because they're trying to hold this thing together while a federal leviathan, a federal parasite, kind of sucks us dry. And my hometown, I always go back to my hometown, when I was growing up, had 300 people in it, and now it's down to 160. And those people and those resources and all those things, that wealth, that prosperity, has kind of been sucked out by a fiat currency US dollar Ponzi scheme. And I see that as underlying all the other issues in our country today. And my big challenge these long months has been to find that signal through the noise, because the administration, and I've watched a few of your podcasts, sir, all these issues that you guys go through, the guns, the COVID, the Roe v. Wade thing that just happened. I see these as issues that the commanding heights of our economy and government, and especially what I call on the website, dustinhill.org, the campaign website where I talk about these issues, the population management class. Congress is now part of this PMC, this population management class, where they've been captured by the very concerns, agencies, commanding heights of the Republic that they used to oversee. And now, instead of us telling them what they should be doing, the commanding heights tell Congress how they should manage us. And that is finding that signal through the noise, because you can see it. It's constant. It is a constant barrage of some, congressional committee hearings, or, are you ready for monkeypox now? They want us at each other's kind of, fighting each other, fighting the gas station, fighting anybody but them. So finding that signal through the noise and letting my constituents, or hopeful constituents, know kind of how this is the federal scam, has been the focus of my campaign. And I think a lot of people, especially this year in 2022, a lot of people are waking up, and it's, I hope I can help that along. Well, that's why I'm here.
Well, it's commendable. And there is a large amount of information you just went through that in part, you answered a couple of questions that I had, but you opened up others that I would like to address. So,
yeah, you got to stop me there, Mr. Vast, every so often. I'll just keep going.
No, I like to hear the answer and let people go and take themselves to wherever they're going to go.
Sure.
So that's how we get to understand who you are. But one of the things I want to go back to is when you were speaking about your private military contractor work. I think most people would be familiar with a group by the name of Blackwater, which is now considered the Academy. So when you say you had left the Marines and started working for this private contractor, were you working for Blackwater or an organization like them? or was it something else?
Yes, my first job out of the military, well, my first job was at a gym in Atlanta, but my second job was with Blackwater USA. And I was actually out there a month. I started, I believe, in August 2007. And then after a month, I was actually in the Missouri Square incident out there in Missouri Square. And yeah, it was not a good day. Let's just say that. It was also an unlucky day for me because that wasn't actually my team. I had been volunteered to go with that team that day as they had a new guy, and this new guy went to my team so they could train the new guy. And yeah, I got out there. That would actually been the third firefight I had been in that week. Baghdad 07 was a really a volatile time, you could say, in the Iraqi capital. And yeah, that was actually, I think, my first experience with kind of the federal monstrosity and how things, things that usually people would join the military to defend, such as honor or kind of these noble ideals, they were kind of being shredded. And especially within the federal legal system, you can see now that truth really plays a back seat to, especially on such a high profile politically charged case. And then once the media gets involved, everything gets convoluted, and it becomes a mess. Yeah. So I did work for Blackwater. I finished out my contract after a year, worked for another subsidiary of Blackwater for I think about another 6 months later when I came back to Baghdad, and then didn't work again in Baghdad until I believe 2014. I was sent back there. I'd gone to some other contracts when the ISIS thing had gone up. So, and then because I had done the invasion of Afghanistan, but then actually didn't serve again in Afghanistan until 2020. I believe I got back out there in August. And by then we were starting to shut everything down.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting experience to see after 20 years, people, especially like myself, contractors, guys in the profession of arms, especially, I think a lot of us, because we'd all known people that we'd lost. We all knew people that, had been blown up or had been just rocked. Those kinds of explosions, those kinds of incidents really send people home different. And after 20 years to have the U.S. government just kind of, yeah, we're done here. I didn't take it as hard because, I hadn't spent that many years in Afghanistan. Like I said, I saw it at the start and I saw it at the end. But I think, I think that's almost something the American public even, it was almost like the mask dropped a little bit. Like, what were we doing here? What was the point of this?
Well, yeah, that was definitely one of the questions. And I know a lot of people, as we got into, say, August of 2021, a lot of PTSD was kicked off amongst many people because of the exit and the manner of the exit. In fact, if I recall correctly, in several interviews you've done, you've mentioned that you were in Kabul a week before the end. Now, when you said the end, I wasn't clear. Do you mean a week before September 1st of 2021, when under the Biden-Harris administration, we were required to leave? Or do you mean at a period before then when we had lost the city itself or gave up the city, to be honest?
Yeah, I think it was near August, the end of August. Okay. I could go back and check the exact date, but I'm pretty sure I'm basing that off of somewhere around a week before the last guy got on the last plane.
Okay.
And flew out. Yeah.
It was a very difficult time and a lot of things were going crazy. I don't mean to hold you to a day. I'm just trying to understand the time frame, because
actually when I got back, Mr. Bass, it was interesting because I got back on the ground and somebody called me from DC and was wondering if I'd be interested in being part of the team to go right back, because they had an NGO that had about a $6 million budget and they needed people to form a team to do extractions out of the town and out of Kabul. And I actually called the guys back there and was like, is this even doable? And they said, no, not, you won't get out the gate. You won't, there's Taliban everywhere. You'd be paying somebody $5,000, then you'd pay them 10. They're going to ask you what's in the back of the car. You're going to be like, oh, nobody. No, it's fine, right? But it's not going to be fine. It's not going to happen. They already had, the vehicle secured from the north side of the airfield that they were going to use. And I just, I got to tell you, I think I felt just like everybody else did, like a weird sense of beleaguered relief, maybe.
Mm.
It's a strange situation, Mr. Vass. It really is. And you know what? I think in the annals of American history, I think people are going to look back at that as a very, like, an inflection point, because that showed people, a lot of people, I think, had even forgotten that we were there. I think they'd even forgotten that, Afghanistan was still an ongoing thing. And what it was especially at the exit when, we left $80 billion worth of equipment there, it's kind of, what do you know? Now we got to buy more stuff. I mean, it was, it goes back to, and I don't want to take up too much time on this question for you, but it goes back to my thesis of this campaign, which is all these programs, all these agencies, all these departments, even the weird, crazy ones, the Disinformation Governance Board, right? All these things have now become cover for grift. And they've become a way for the American federal Leviathan to bill the American public for whatever it wants. It comes up and it follows the same pattern. You always start with this good intention. Take an agency. Well, this agency was formed with a good intention somewhere down the line. Then it grows because it gets funded, and it never recedes, right? And then it just becomes a tool for the powerful at some point. And this is something that the war zones have now done. And a big part of my campaign is saying, listen, Congress is constitutionally mandated to declare war, right? But we just have all these war zones everywhere that Congress has just kind of outsourced it to the security state, right? So, and I think they've done that because they learned from the time in Iraq that, hey, if you put your name on this line, but it goes bad, well then, voters might be mad at you, right? And it's the same thing with the legislative side. Now Congress has outsourced its legislative, constitutionally mandated legislative powers to all these federal agencies that just make these rules. And guess what? Nobody's attributable to it. Oh, we didn't make that rule. I didn't vote for that. The EPA did, or the FEC did. It's Congress needs to stand up, reassert itself, and take back these powers that the Constitution gave to it.
Okay. So people may be able to see that's a little bit of an expansion on an idea that you mentioned on May 11th. It's on your Facebook page, which is Dustin Hill for Congress. It's also on your Twitter feed, D Hill for Congress. And so I do recognize when you mentioned that, that's something you had been speaking about at that time. Yes, I pay attention to a lot of details when I do my interviews.
Well, I hope people will go there, and I'm always ready to get shredded. This is a job interview.
Well, no,
this is
important to know.
A job interview. Yeah,
it's important to know what you've said over time, and that also makes me wonder that what I have not noticed as much, and maybe it's something that I've missed, but I didn't see it on your main website, which is dustinhill.org. where you're talking about veterans. And I'm a little surprised, both because of the amount of time in the Marines and time in the private military, looking at that. And I say to myself, and you were down in Kabul as we saw the biggest fiasco since and probably exceeding Saigon, the fall of Saigon under the Biden-Harris administration. But I haven't seen you speak a lot about veteran affairs and veterans themselves in this campaign.
right?
Why is that?
That's mostly because, and obviously I care for veterans very much.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that you
No,
don't.
right. And that's because when we started this campaign, I wish I could show you the early versions of the website. It was all guys in body armor and American flags, and I asked them, hey, I'm going to send you, and politically, people want to make hay out of the veteran thing, and I'm very proud of my service in the military and after. And when people say, hey, thank you for your service, I always usually tell them, thank you for sending me. Because like I said, it's about giving them a return on their investment. I told the website people that we need to dial it back. I'm proud of my service, but the veteran thing just gets you in the door. It just says, hey, this guy's got a spine, he's served, but I don't want, it's about what can I bring to the table now. So I'm very proud of, on the front page of the website, I'm sure you've seen it, it was nice. I get to put on these pictures of me and my brothers, through the years. And, they make fun of me for it now. That's fine. But it's, if you go on there, it's mostly about economics. It's mostly, which, like I said, is the central theme of my campaign. It's mostly about what my military and foreign federal experience can bring to the table of the federal government now. Why are we in the spot we are in right now? And yeah, that's now if you're asking about what I think we should be doing with our veterans, I tell people right now,
That's a follow-up, yes.
yeah. Because obviously we're on the hook for, a tremendous amount of healthcare, of mental health care, of, we have, and this is because I see it as starting from our national leadership not being combat veterans. And you know what, to go back real quick to that Blackwater incident, that occurred because Blackwater at one time had the third largest military force in Iraq. Now this military force, of which I was a part of, the probably the most, not aggressive, but we had large caliber weapons, automatic, and we drove around in giant trucks. We weren't the black sub guys. We waited out under overpasses in Baghdad for the black suburban guys to get in trouble and we go rescue them. This military force wasn't put under a military command. The trucks that went out there into Missouri Square that day probably would have had under the military at least a captain rank in command of it. But instead, once you place these kind of things under the command of more law enforcement type people, the State Department, RSOs, things like that nature, there's a reason why the military has evolved these chains of commands through thousands and thousands of years. It's also the reason why I detest that those men who were now pardoned by Donald Trump, thanks to the Don, one of the best things he did during his presidency. I thank him every day for that. There's a reason why those guys going out there were not, they shouldn't have been placed under a civilian court system. Civilians, especially American civilians, the military recognized that they aren't equipped with that kind of experience and training that a military person has. They don't perhaps understand how the laws of engagement or the laws of war are regulated, and they don't understand that when you're in a firefight, what goes on, psychologically, physiologically, just the mental stress, how it changes your perception and whatnot. So to see those men tried in a civilian court back in DC was, it was just, but like I said before, it really kind of, it exposed me to a lot more than I ever thought it would. The thing about veterans now, especially, and I tell people all the time, the best thing we can do for our veterans now is take care of the ones that are hurt. We have to do that. That is not that's non-negotiable. But the best thing to do for our future veterans is not get them involved in these 20-year-long engagements. I always go back to George H.W. Bush. You might have heard about this because I've talked about it on previous podcasts and interviews. George H.W. Bush was the last president we had who was a combat veteran. And in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, he, people wanted him to go to Baghdad. And he said, no, we've done our objective. We came to do, we're going home. So you didn't have this 20 years of soldiers, Marines being awash in a civilian population without actually being forward massing. I mean, the invasion of Afghanistan, the invasion of Iraq, when you're riding, trying to illustrate to people that when you're riding that wave of destruction forward, it's just an overwhelming amount of violence that you don't get a lot of resistance. Once you're kind of bogged down, the quagmire effect, that's when you start taking these horrible IED charges. It starts sapping morale. But, I think especially with Iraq and Afghanistan, the industry side of it took over, the business side. And that's one of the things we need to get back from is war now has become a business. Legislation has become a business. All these things have become businesses because once you make the money endlessly printable, there's no reason to stop the problem. There's no reason to win the war. There's no reason to actually legislate solutions anymore. Because then we wouldn't need agency A, B, C, D through F 200 or whatnot. So that's my biggest project and that's why I tell people about future veterans.
Okay, so you're looking at prevention as the best means of addressing those needs for the future.
Yes, sir.
I understand that. So we've been talking about several interesting things, talking about overseas and talking about the economy. Well, we've talked about Bitcoin. We've talked about that potential for our government. We've covered your background, international politics, a little bit about immigration. And I do advise to people, we can't cover everything. There are so many issues that anyone who's going to be in Congress or run for Congress, there's no way we'd be here all day trying to cover all the topics. Yeah. That being said, I suggest people do check out the dustinhill.org to see what you said there, to go to the Dustin Hill for Congress on YouTube, which has some clips of you speaking about various issues, to learn more about you and to contact your campaign.
Yes, sir.
But the one thing that we've seen consistently in all of the media that you've been able to put out and in all the conversations you've had, whether it be with KWOS or with CSC Talk Radio and some of the other programs that you've been on, you talk about economics. In fact, in our conversation today, you've been talking about economics as a forefront. You've mentioned that you believe that economics are the key to all the other issues, if I've understood you correctly, that is the key to all the other issues, and the dollar is basically the tool that's being used to make that happen, if I'm understanding you correctly. If that is correct, knowing that we have $31 trillion in debt, interest rates are going up, so we are going to accelerate the amount of debt that we're going to have as a nation. Taking into account the fact that we have $125 trillion in unfunded liabilities, I don't see how we can either get rid of the US dollar, nor do I see that Congress is willing to reduce spending. I think that's accurate and true, whether it's Republican or Democrat or anyone else at this moment. If that's correct, and that if all I've said is summarized correctly, what do you propose to do to represent the people of Missouri's 3rd and the nation? It's a tough question, I know. There's a couple of parts to it.
So name a federal agency, sir.
First one comes off mind is FBI, as an example.
FBI. Okay. So the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, under the Department of Justice, right, follows that same pattern. Start with a good intention, right? These are the 1950s, the G-men, you know, the guys taking down Soviet spies in the Cold War, right? Counterintelligence. And look what it's morphed into. All right, now you've got what was the governor in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the majority of people in this big high-profile ring that was going to kidnap her, FBI informants, right? It's become, instead of a tool that it was designed to be to protect American rights, right, against incursions by foreign agents or investigate crime, it's now become a tool for the bureaucracy to protect itself, right? So, and this is the other thing, nobody ever gets fired from any of these agencies, even when they've been seen to be, you know, riven with corruption, as like many of the COVID grant programs were, or completely inept. You know, James Comey at one time was the head of the FBI, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
These agencies never shrink either, right? Nobody ever stands up from either party and stands up and says, hey, this is a one-page bill right here that says this agency is corrupt and these departments within it have to go. Not we're going to reform it, not we're going to, oh, you know, we're going to improve it. You know, if you had an employee that was stealing from you only part of the time, would you invest more into them? But this is what we do in this bizarre simulation that is the late stage capitalist society we're in, is we decide, we don't decide anything. The people in charge of our elected representatives, which I call elected managers, decide, no, this is the next tool we're going to use to keep the American public in line. And it is your job, elected manager, that we donate how many millions to for your campaign, for your seat. This is where you're going to, you know, sign this bill. One of the big things, I know you've asked this question. One of the big things that got me into this race was the Ukraine situation. It's as if, and they haven't, but it's as if Americans have forgotten that we just got out of a 20-year engagement that was worth trillions of dollars of treasure and thousands of lives in Afghanistan. But all of a sudden, all these people think that all of a sudden Ukraine's going to be different. Like the federal government's all of a sudden going to run this one right. But look at the messaging. The messaging is, and this is where I get into, this is the population management class. They generate this consent, right? They manufacture consent, to use a term from Chomsky, I believe. And guess what? That's the cover. That's the popular cover to make it happen. Oh, we're doing the people's will. The incumbent voted for that $40 billion of Ukraine spending. And if you take a look at it, 3/4 of it goes to the DC bubble, right? So this is why I've run the campaign, and, you know, hopefully I can unseat this guy and get that political capital from Missouri's 3rd district, right? Is because I'm not beholden to those donors or that class yet, I can stand up on the floor of the House and say, here is a one-page bill that says this agency, Agency X, is corrupt. These are the things we've seen it do. It has to go. One of my big ones, the Department of Education, right? Why does the federal government have anything to do with our educational system? Is education better now? Is it more effective? Is it cheaper? Listen, Department of Education, you obviously haven't done what you were designed to do. You're not fulfilling. In fact, you've been counterproductive. Now we have an entire generation of kids that have near worthless degrees. They're flooded the market with them, and they're saddled with a generation's worth of debt. I think it was 1.7 trillion was the last thing.
Yes.
Get rid of it. It's not working. It's become a tool of the oligarchy. So it's that's why I hope I can get there. And use that moral fortitude, that intestinal fortitude that I learned in the service, that I learned through 23 years of foreign engagements, and not be taken over. I mean, if you look at the other side, I think the Democratic side has kind of gone a little crazy, but they do still, most of the modern suburban middle of the country Democrats, I think they're full of good intentions, and I'm going to do my best to, should I win this primary, to kind of, hey, listen, we're both two sides of the same coin. We're both being taken advantage of. They use your good intentions on your side, and they use our, like patriotism and stuff on our side. And meanwhile, while we're fighting each other, their hand is in our pocket. Send me up there with a mandate. Send me up there with a large majority of voters, both Democrat and Republican. Send somebody different that is, for lack of a better word, a weapon. That's what my experience, that's what the federal government turned me into, was a weapon. And, hopefully I can make that happen. And the thing is, Mr. Vass, its beauty is its simplicity. I mean, if we don't get the reins back on this dragon, it's just going to burn everything down, and it's going to send us the bill for it. And, I tell people all the time, because some people take it the wrong way and they say, well, you just want to tear down the federal government. You just want to blow it up or something. I'm like, no. America, as a guy who has collapsed central governments, I mean, that's what you're doing in military invasions. As a man who's seen, like I said before about being in Egypt, right? As a man who's seen a central government collapse and seen the horrors and the depravities that brings, I do not want to see the federal government crumble. I want to see it shrink by probably, 80%. But I know I might not even be able to accomplish that in my first term or second, God willing. So, but if we don't get the reins on this thing, it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing, and it's just going to topple over. So either we can start pruning it smartly, or it's just going to implode on itself, I fear. And the American people, like I said, are going to be left holding the bill. The federal government needs to be strong. It needs to be smart, but it needs to be small. The federal budget for last year was, I think, $6.85 trillion. The GDP of the United States is only like 23. I mean, that is a federal government that is 1/3 the size of the United States economy. That is bonkers, for lack of a better word. That's like me and you trying to run around with somebody 1/3 our size on our back. Government doesn't create anything. All it can do is transfer, right? So it has to suck that wealth out of the American public first. But this is what it's done, because now they don't even need to do it through taxes. They do it through every dollar that's in existence, right? As they print more. So if you're in Germany and you're using dollars, guess what? You're having your dollar subverted. And this is going to cause a problem. You can see it already with this Ukraine-Russia situation. We said, oh, guess what? You're out of SWIFT. We're cutting you off, right? Well, hold up. If we're going to do that, the rest of the world's watching. If we're going to do that, if we're going to say the dollar is not inviolate, then all of a sudden these other countries are going to go, okay, well, when is the U.S. going to be mad at me? Maybe we should start dumping our U.S. dollar reserves. And as those dollars come back to this country, that's when you're going to see hyperinflation. And it's dangerous. And, but sadly, it always seems to be the way civilizations go. There was a great book. I don't know if you've read it. It was an essay by Sir John Glubb, The Fate of Civilizations, I believe, or The Decline of Empires. He talks about the 250-year kind of lifespan typically of empires. And, and then Ray Dalio also did a great piece on kind of the economic side. This is we go about 250 years, and then things sometimes get hyperinflated out of existence. And it just causes a lot of, discord. It usually ends in civil unrest. So, but guess what? We have a chance this year, 2022. right, is the year. Because if you think this year's crazy, sir, wait till 2024. Look at all the things they've been throwing out there this year. And guess what? We've gotten the field down. This is just, it's all come together so nicely and so, just immaculately, that we finally have a chance to get, a true kind of constitutionalist that's not connected to these big, just get me in there and set me loose. So, yeah, that's what I hope the very third takes from this.
Well, definitely. And I do suggest, again, for everyone that is looking at the Missouri Third, whether they're looking for volunteering, they want to vote, they want to donate, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, come on out.
To look at all of the we do not select any candidate. We suggest they look at all candidates, review all of the websites, and make an informed decision for themselves. And I hope that they will do that with your information. Again, it's DustinHill.org. So it's a little different than what people are thinking of. It's DustinHill.org, not .com, not one of the others. It's .org.
Well, we're down to three. We're down to 3 candidates now. Unfortunately, we'll have 4 on the ballot, but we're down to 3. And I think you interviewed one a few days ago, or maybe a couple weeks ago.
I did, Mr. Brandon Wilson.
So, yeah, and you know what? This is what primaries are for, sir. Is it's not the goal of it's not the role of the Republican Party to crush candidates' speech. They're here to present their candidates, and then it's the candidates' job to say what their issues are, explain their thoughts on them, and then inspire voters to go out and vote for them. And this is like I said, it's a job interview, but politics is war. It is. And, people, should expect to have their views challenged. You're getting into the ring, and that is part of the battle. And that's the fire that we forged really good candidates in. So I encourage people to go watch that previous podcast you were on a few weeks ago with my competitor, my opponent. Go check out all the websites. I think especially Republican primaries, like an open Republican primary that Missouri's Third has, are, primary voters are a bit more selective. They're a bit more discerning, because guess what? They're not just going to sit and wait around for November. They want to take part in the selection process.
Yes.
Flawed sometimes that it might be, especially with open primaries. I know there's talk about sometimes the other party gets in there and tries to go it one way or another. Yeah. So, this is a harrowing job interview, to be sure. Not today, but the campaign in general. Yeah. Also you, sir. I mean, I can't take this anymore. But politics, like I said, politics is war. I'm always. It's more I hate to say this, but I like the fight.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why I did well in the Marine Corps. There's a reason why I did so well as a federal contractor. These kinds of things are important, and you don't get sharper, you don't get better unless there's an adversary, unless there's somebody asking that question. That if people just came up to you and say, you know what, I agree with you. Yep, you got it. You got it. It's the people that you disagree with that really sharpen your words, make them more concise, make them smarter. Like, hey, have you ever thought of that? Especially, sir, you're from the Bronx, right? And, I'm a farm boy from Missouri. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you and I probably have different ideas on governance and how, kind of the world works, just city to country, densities, like things that would work out there, probably wouldn't work in the Bronx. You've dealt with an entirely different array of issues.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole American political system is supposed to throw at you. Like if I get elected to Congress, of course I'm going to have Democrats, I'm going to have people from entirely different backgrounds that are going to be coming up with, guess what? Salient points. Okay. That, hey, this is how we need to run this because my constituents need X. But I think, especially right now, the guiding light has to be the U.S. Constitution. The federal government has gone so far afield from the U.S. Constitution that unless you can hold that up as kind of the shining light down the cave of that where we're at, we're kind of wandering in the darkness right now. There's a light over there, and if I can just get people to look over there and say, "Hey, look at that. Let's go towards that." I think that's where I can do the best job. I think that's where, if I can find that signal through the noise and get people on that same wavelength, that same signal that I've seen from my experience, I think we've got a really good shot at this, sir. I really do. It's when I started this thing out, I was kind of just expecting to, all right, you're going to talk to a bunch of people, and it's been great because it's like I'm finally home. For 20 some years, I've always come home to the family farm in Montgomery County. And, but it was always kind of like I was visiting. You're dropping your gear, you're getting ready for your next trip, grabbing your next set of gear. It's finally like I'm really, really home. And one of the best and most fun parts of this campaign has been meeting all the people that are from my home that are, they're my family.
Right.
And that's been great. So look for me out there on the trail, sir. Yeah.
I'm always happy to hear that people are having, especially first time in the process, because it is trying. My experience, from my own personal experience, it's a trying, eye-awakening experience, because it's not like what you think it's about until you actually get in there. And then you're like, oh, this is different. So I'm always happy to hear that it's a positive impact on someone's life. And I thank you for that. I thank you for answering the questions for us for the last hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. It's longer than we expected, but I think we gained a lot more information. And I think the voters will appreciate that. And I appreciate that. So I do thank you for that. Of course, you're always welcome onto the program. No matter what happens, you're always welcome to come on and to share your views with us. And we wish everyone always success in every election that they're in.
Appreciate it, sir.
I just wanted to definitely share that with you. Okay.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what, if we win this primary August 2nd, 3 weeks from Tuesday, I will definitely be back, sir.
I would hope so. Yeah. With that, again, folks, you'll see the descriptions, links to everything we've been talking about in our conversation today in the description, if not on the screen as well. We do ask you to reach out to Dustin Hill to speak with him directly if you have questions about that. And other than that, we do want to mention, got to plug this, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you, the public, where everyone can talk to us about whatever issue that they have. We invite you to join us and to add your voice from anywhere in the world. But other than that, I want to say thank you again to our guest, Dustin Hill. I want to say thank you to people in Missouri and across this nation for watching this. And we look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Michael Voss, and you've just seen my interview from July 8th with Dustin Hill. He is a candidate for the Missouri 3rd District, a congressional race, and facing a primary on August 2nd of 2022. In our discussion, you may have noticed that there seemed to be a skip in the content, that there is some information that is missing, and that is correct. Now, due to the difficulties working with Zoom and certain technical issues in our systems, we were not able to provide the middle portion of our conversation with Mr. Dustin Hill. That comprised approximately 20, maybe 25 minutes of information, answers to questions in reference to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, how it is affecting America, and how it may have a potential as an alternative currency, speaking about international policy, talking about not just what happened in Afghanistan, but the Ukraine and other parts of the world that are affecting America today and in the future, as well as talking about immigration at our southern border and overall. And we gained great insight from Mr. Hill about his positions on each of these. We solemnly apologize both to Mr. Hill, to the voters of Missouri, and of course, all Americans that may see this interview, that we are not able to present that portion of the interview. What we do suggest and we do hope that you will seek out Mr. Hill to speak with him about these issues and others that you may have, to ask him directly about these questions and to get answers directly from him, as well as all of his sites and sources that we have included both in the video and in the description of the video. It is always horrible when we have technical issues that interrupt any of the content that we provide to you, our audience. It is especially so when we have an interview with a candidate or an elected official and you are denied the opportunity to see some of that information. We hope you do not hold that against us. We most of all hope you do not hold that against any candidate. It is not their fault. It is our technical issues, and we will address these as we go forward so that this will not happen again. Again, we solemnly give our apologies to Mr. Hill and his staff for this accident. It does happen, and we will strive to be better in the future. And we do hope, again, that you will look into Mr. Hill and all candidates in the Missouri races for Congress to learn directly information about them and to ask them questions that we were not able to present for you. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your patience with us, and we hope to improve as we go forward. Thank you.